Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 14 in NFL DFS is here, and I've got a first look for you for week 14 on DraftKings. We're going to go through position by position. We're going to try to build a very simple lineup, somewhat for cash games. You can use it in leagues if you want. We're going to focus on volume. We're going to focus on matchups. And there may be some players in this that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to try and get to the guys that have the best point per dollar output, because that's what you want to focus on for your cash game lineups. Tournaments are way more about stacking. Tournaments are way more about correlation. You can end up with correlation in your tournament games. That's fine, but it's not something, or your cash games, but it's not something that you need to force. I've been asked every week since I've been doing this content for about 9 years now, what is the difference between a cash game and a tournament? Well, let me tell you. A cash game is anything that pays out 33% or more of the field. So your triple ups, your three-man games, your double ups, 50-50s, head-to-head games, where you only have to beat a percentage of the field and you win the same amount of money, whether you finish the first person in the money. If you finish in the, if it's 100-man 50-50 and you finish 49th, you get the same amount of money as the guy who finishes first. That's a cash game, right? I don't have to beat everybody. Don't have to be faster than the bear. I just have to be faster than you. In a tournament, it pays out way less of the field, 12%, 15%, 20% of the field, and it's tiered. So you have to finish in the top 1% to have any chance of making any real money on that slate. So you have to beat everybody, right? So we're more willing to put all of our eggs in one basket. So that's the main difference between cash and tournaments when I say cash games versus a tournament lineup or a GPP play. Thank you guys for watching the videos. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell. There's a join button if you want to become a channel member. You get a nice little VIP badge next to your name that will upgrade the longer you are subscribed to the channel, as well as you get some great emotes and access to the VIP rooms in Discord. If you're not in Discord, what the hell are you doing? There are free rooms if you're not subbed. Subbed meaning hit the join button, pay the $5 a month for the channel membership. There are free rooms in there. You don't have to do that. You can conversate with anybody of the 5,000 people that are in our Discord. But if you do become a channel member, you want to go over to Discord, use the things in the hashtag instructions folder, link your YouTube account to Discord, and then within a certain amount of time, whenever it syncs with YouTube, your name will turn from white to red, and you'll see all these beautiful VIP rooms on the left side where people are talking every single day. And that's the best way to get better at daily fantasy. Surround yourselves with people who are trying to get better themselves. And when NBA season coming in about 15 days, if you've never tried playing daily fantasy NBA, or if you have played NBA but you're looking for a less isolated experience, our Discord is exactly where you want to be in those VIP channels. So thank you guys very much. Anything that you click really helps the channel. So I appreciate you guys and all the replies and the likes over the course of the season. And let's get to the first look for week 14. He's really good. He's more of a tournament play for me, but he's really good. We want floor with quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes does have a great floor. He has access to a fantastic ceiling as well. However, because of the narrow band of scoring at quarterback, we can afford to pay down and get similar point expectations. So I've rarely paid over 7K for quarterbacks this year in my cash game lineups because we really haven't had to. Now, earlier in the season, weeks 2 through 10, when the pricing was way cheaper and way different, like looking at the running backs, you've got guys over 9K. We didn't have anybody over 7,600. Remember when Ezekiel Elliott was lighting the world on fire, when the Cowboys were the fantasy carnival and we could just play whoever they were playing against, and the running backs were all 7,800 to 6K. You could afford a bunch of guys that were getting 20 touches a game. They really juiced up the running backs late in the season, which has forced us to search for value wide receivers and more value quarterbacks as well. Russ Wilson, same thing, really high ceiling, especially against the Jets, who prop up opponents' passing efficiency. The way to attack the Jets, everybody says, well, they're just going to run the ball, but every team has passed against the Jets and passed extremely well against the Jets. Speaking of guys like Mahomes, when everybody said, well, we can't play Patrick Mahomes against the Jets because all he's going to do, they're just going to run the ball. Well, that didn't work out. Same thing kind of in play for me this week with Russ Wilson. I know that CARSON is going to be a play. I know that he is in play this week and somebody that you can consider and should consider. However, Going with Russ in tournaments is another great way to go this week. Kyler Murray has not been running the football because of the AC sprain in his shoulder, and he has not been producing on the ground, taking that high floor away. 15, 31, and 15 is not Kyler-like when we consider what he was doing before with 61, 106, 67, and 74 yards rushing with multiple touchdowns on the ground in play pretty much every single week. And now, 3 straight weeks with that AC sprain starting in this week here against Seattle, has not been the running threat. As I've said, he's not that great of a passer if he does not have the threat of running the ball, both in real life and for fantasy. He can convert touchdowns. That's fine. But like, since that injury, 18, 8.9, 20.26 in the 3 games where he is not adding that floor and ceiling with his rushing ability. And it's turned him from a 29, 30 point a game guy down into this. Without the ability to run the ball, Kyler Murray is at best a $6,300 quarterback. So for me, until that shifts, I'm not interested. Now, if that shoulder injury goes away and we get news that it's completely subsided and they're going to run the football with him, great. I'll go back to Kyler Murray, but I'm not doing it yet. Tannehill against Jacksonville, who we've basically been playing quarterbacks against this team all season long. Jacksonville basically giving it up to quarterbacks every single week. Tannehill certainly in play for me. Everybody's going to jump off the Justin Herbert train because of this horrible game last week, but now he faces Atlanta, another team that we've been streaming quarterbacks against. Taysom Hill finally threw touchdowns. He threw 2 of them. 24 DraftKings points. Again, he is the new guy who gives us a very realistic floor with touchdown upside on the ground, and it's not like they've shied away from throwing with him, but his 2 games where he's thrown for over 200 yards were both against Atlanta. So as he faces more real pass defenses, it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be able to sustain that level of efficiency with 73% completion, 78% completions against Atlanta. So we got to kind of temper our expectations here. And Philly, not the best defense, but they do have a strong front 7. Hey guys, I know y'all love Darius Slay. Well, they got him. Hasn't been good recently, but they got Darius Slay, guys. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can do anything this week. I do think that he brings a really solid floor for 6,600 here. Look at some cheaper guys. Derek Carr against Indy. Derek Carr against weak defenses. I'm more interested in Derek Carr against really good defense. Phillip Rivers had himself a day against Houston, but everybody has themselves a day against Houston, and he still only had 19 fantasy points, a bad foot, and an offensive line that's been a little bit weakened, where they have to a little bit, in my opinion, rely on the run more than they have in the past. Ryan going up against the Chargers. He's been bad a lot recently. The ceiling has not seemed to be there. Andy Dalton, road revenge game for the Red Rifle. All the alliteration. Y'all in? I'm debating it. I have not yet decided. I think that he's somebody I'm certainly going to consider in tournaments. I don't know if we really need the value at this extreme level of value down in here to get to where we want. And we do have to monitor Daniel Jones's injury. We'll see how it goes, because this Giants offense is solid and Daniel Jones does bring us some ability, but we're going to have to see, can he move? Because if we don't have the rushing floor that Daniel Jones brings to us, he's a lot more dangerous at 5,500 if he can't run as a result of that hamstring than if he is at full strength and can go. So I'm going to pay up here at quarterback this week. We can go with either one of these two, whether it's going to be Herbert or Tannehill. I'm going to go with Herbert because I think that there's a great bounce back coming here for him. And efficiency, not volume, is what drives quarterback scoring. We have seen a lot of volume from him, and he has been efficient in terms of throwing multiple touchdowns in most of the games that he has started this year. And a lot of his tools are down priced this week. Dalvin Cook has been outstanding, but now faces Tampa Bay. We're going to have to monitor the Madison injury, his surgery. He had an appendectomy last week, which led to absurd usage for Dalvin Cook, basically getting 38 touches last week. Just ridiculous. If Madison's out again, we might see another 30 touch game for Dalvin in week 14, which at 9,400 makes him have this absurd floor, 27 points and volume. Although I understand people don't want to play running backs against Tampa Bay, and rightfully so. I get it. They're a really tough defense and they don't allow a lot of fantasy points, but Volume always trumps. Volume always trumps. That's what you have to go after. Derrick Henry, is it a week to get back on him? Not in cash for me, but I do think that you can play him in tournaments. Aaron Jones is where I do want to hang my hat here. Now, the issue with Aaron Jones is that I know we're never going to get 22 to 25 carries out of him. Just not the way that they run their offense. But an extremely efficient running back. Extremely efficient running back. And we have basically the best matchup for opposing running backs possible with Detroit, and we've attacked them all season long. They should be playing from ahead. If we get 15 carries and 5 targets for Aaron Jones, as well as the vast majority of the inside the 5 carries, Aaron Jones at 7,600 can certainly pay this off. He's a clean path this week against a really bad defense. Couple of other guys that I wanted to mention. I did talk about CARSON in the opening. He had 6 targets last week. That is great in a loss. This is a game that they should play from ahead. I am expecting him to increase his usage as the season goes on. So getting 15 to 20 carries out of him with 4 or 5 targets, nowhere near out of the realm of possibility. And the Jets are really, really bad. And he is going to get they've targeted him when they get into the red zone, which has led to these receiving touchdowns that he's seen a big boost in this year. When they get inside the 5, I expect Chris Carson to get a lot of the carries as well. Not going to go that route. Austin Ekeler, another bounce back spot for him here against Atlanta. Really high floor. A lot of game log watchers going to see this. The never again crowd is going to be worried that they can't count on him because of what he did last week, but he did have 9 targets in that game and is certainly somebody to monitor. But I know that we're going to get some of these guys that are going to get involved. I mean, it is what it is, but Austin Ekeler should be in play for you at 7K again this week. Again, we nailed the fact that he should get between 6 and 10 targets pretty much every single week. He got 9 last week, just didn't cash in. I'm chalking that game up to just variance at this point. David Montgomery, another fantastic matchup, but they boosted his salary by 1,000. He's up to 6,500, which now brings in more variance into play than it was at 5.5K. He does have a higher floor than people are willing to admit. Houston has been horrible against opposing running backs. They should be playing this game from ahead. He has a realistic expectation of 20 touches. I would hope that they stop giving the ball 10 times to Cordarrelle Patterson and just feed the ball 20 times to Montgomery and target him 4 or 5 times as well. Anytime you get as many inside the 5 carries as him and the inclusion in the passing game gives you a high floor with a possible ceiling expectation, and 6,500 is probably the right price for him. It's not like last week where he was egregious at 6,500 or 5,500. 6,500 is more of a fair price, and it's going to make people make some decisions. But I think that there's a couple of players that are under 6K that I did want to hit on for the usage of this video. One, the last 2 games that we've seen from Jonathan Taylor, one with a COVID exposure issue that fixed itself. He had 22 and 4 against Green Bay. He only had 13 touches at Houston on the ground, 3 through the air. He's proven that he does not have a problem catching the ball this year with 29 catches on the 30 targets that have gone his way. Remember the narrative that Jonathan Taylor can't catch? Jonathan Taylor does not block very well in the passing game, but so what? Neither does CEH, and the Chiefs have run him out there all year with the exception of week 13 where he was a little bit hurt and they just kind of said, you know what, let's save him. We don't need him. Get your horses on the field, Frank. When you hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor or you throw the ball to Jonathan Taylor, the chunk yardage is massive. 18-yard carry in this game, 24-yard carry in this game, 39-yard touchdown in week 13 as well. The upside here is fantastic. The usage is fine at the price for 5,800, and the matchup against Las Vegas is solid. So 5,800 is where I want to go there, and I'm going to go right back to another player that we targeted in week 13, and that's Myles Gaskin. His lowest target output on the season last week with only 2. He had not had any other game where he had less than 4, so I'm expecting that to bounce a little bit, especially going up against Kansas City where they're going to have to open up this offense just a hair. 21 carries on the ground, 20 touch expectation here at home. This Miami defense has been tougher than people give them credit for. The floor is outstanding. The usage inside the 5 has been really good, so he does have touchdown upside that goes along with it. He just didn't cash in on it last week. If he had, he would not have been 5,600. We'd be talking about him as the top value on the slate. I think people are going to look for reasons to get away from Myles Gaskin this week as opposed to reasons to get on to Myles Gaskin this week. But you can see he averages 14.3 points per game. He's been really solid. For 5,600, that gives us a very realistic expectation on a median outcome with a possibility of a ceiling if he can find his way into the end zone. So give me Myles Gaskin. Let's move on to other players. Let's plug in a defense down here. I don't care. Whatever. Fine. Wide receivers. We'll worry about defense as the week goes on, as always. Davante Adams has to be in your cash game consideration, even if you don't end up on Davante Adams this week. Because he's essentially doing, on a point per game basis, what every single one of these running backs who gets the same usage is doing. Would you rather pay $9,000 for Derrick Henry on DraftKings, or would you rather pay $9,000 for Davante Adams on DraftKings? He's essentially what Mike Thomas was last year. Yeah, he had a bad game here against Detroit, but he left that game early with an injury. 12.7 against Tampa Bay. Fine. Had 10 targets in that game. So that's his floor game on the year. To 3x his salary, he basically needs to get his average points per game. He has as much chance to break a slate as anybody else on a week in, week out basis. And I think that he's somebody that we should be considering for our lineups. I'm not going to use him in this lineup, but I could have used. He was in my first draft in this lineup, but I went with Aaron Jones instead of going with a cheaper running back or a separated running back. And I don't want to go with Aaron Jones, Davante Adams in the same lineup. For other reasons. We can pivot off Jones if we want. I'm sticking with Jones for this. Understand if you want to go with Adams instead. TYREEK Hill at 8,500 usually would be considered a hit or miss play, but with double-digit targets in each of his last 4 games, he's no longer that. So now he's got the volume to sustain a really high floor and the game to sustain a really high ceiling expectation with the touchdowns that did not happen on Sunday Night Football that could have happened on Sunday Night Football. And now apparently he's just going to backflip into the end zone anytime he gets it. So they don't give you bonus points for that on DraftKings, but I kind of think that they should. Keenan Allen is another great bounce back spot against Atlanta, who's been terrible. And Keenan Allen gets 10 targets pretty much every week that he did not play Miami. So I'm going to go back to Keenan Allen here in this spot. If you want to flip this, and you want to say, okay, I'm going to pay down at running back off of Aaron Jones, get to a cheaper one, and pay up from Allen to Davante Adams because of the heightened touchdown expectation for Adams, I'm fine with that. I'm going with a more balanced approach here for this lineup. And A.J. Brown against Jacksonville, whether we're getting our exposure to these two passing games through, or passing defenses through the quarterback or through the wide receiver, you can go cheaper at quarterback because you can get your exposure to those defenses and how inefficient they've been at stopping opposing wide receivers or quarterbacks at the wide receiver position. AJ Brown has as much upside as anybody and a really solid floor. I'm going to go with AJ Brown in this spot. Let's look at a tight end and see where we can go. Travis Kelce has been about the biggest game changer at the position as you could get in season long, and on a week-to-week basis at tight end has been a winner for you in daily fantasy. 21 points per game at a position where we've seen more misses, more bust rate on any tight end than we've had at any position this year. Tight ends have just been bad. We've seen that constantly. So there's 2 ways to go at tight end. You can either pay all the way up for somebody like Waller, who had a fantastic week last week, but now goes against Indy as opposed to going up against the Jets. And it's a bit of a different situation where we're not going to expect 17 targets. The biggest game for a tight end since 2002. So that's how kind of historic that output was for him to completely break the week 13 slate. Looking down at some other guys, Mike Gesicki, 11 targets, big bounce for him after seeing 5 each in the last 3 before that. 23 fantasy points for him. He's a great target around the goal line. They should be throwing the ball a little bit more. I'm not expecting 11 targets, but he should see more than 5 in this spot. I like Gesicki more if Fitz is the quarterback than if Tua's the quarterback, but it just kind of is what it is. Same thing goes for Hunter Henry. Good bounce back spot for him with only 2 targets last week. Tonyan priced up to 4,200. I like him less at this price than I liked him at 3,700. And maybe I'm being a little bit too price sensitive for a cash game, but you have to be a little bit more price sensitive in terms of cash games to get targets over touchdown expectation. On FanDuel, a little bit of a different story, as it's very touchdown oriented. DraftKings way more volume oriented, so I'm looking for guys that can get me a lot of targets. Against Carolina, they've been inefficient. You'd get more targets from Noah Fant reasonably on a week in, week out basis. Jonnu Smith, monitor his injury to see if he's going to play again this week. Again, more targets expected than Tonyan, and he's way down here at 3,800. Goddard at 4,000 with Ertz back kind of clouds things a little bit. It just gives him one more wide receiver and lowers his target expectation, especially with the possibility that they move to Hurts this week. Hayden Hurst at 3,700 has seen his targets kind of yo-yo. This seems, if he's going with an even and an odd week, it is an even week, so maybe he's going to get his 8 targets as opposed to the 2 and 4 that he seemed to get in odd weeks. But I think that this is another opportunity to possibly pay down. So Jordan Reed at 3,500, we have to see what his numbers are in the Monday night game, but with 6 targets in their last 2 games, with the injuries that they've sustained and absences that they have in that offense, let's see if he sustains that level of usage. But I think that there's a couple of guys that are extremely cheap, and one of them that I'm going to focus on in this spot, if we're not going with David Montgomery at 6,500, is Cole Kmet, the non-copyright frog, has completely wrested the job from Jimmy Graham. They have basically converted to Cole Kmet, and this has been a 3-week process, not just a reaction to, well, he scored a touchdown this week, so I was talking about him. We were talking about him on the CSS DFS podcast on ESPN last week, in the sense that he was playing more snaps and running way more routes and getting way more targets per route run than Jimmy Graham. The Bears have kind of pivoted to this kid. This is where they're invested, and they think that this is where their future is. And Houston, an extremely inefficient defense at stopping opposing passing games and running games. He's going to have opportunities once they get close to score a touchdown. And 2,900 seems to be too cheap for a 5 to 7 target expectation, when somebody like Tonyan has basically the same expectation in terms of volume and usage, and he is 1,300 more. So for cash games and everything that KMET can open up, give me him, and we're going to try and find our 4K or less wide receiver. And I know that it's early in the week, and we can kind of pivot from this as the week goes on. Anthony Miller saw a good amount of targets last week, 5, 6, 7 the last 3, 10.9 DraftKings points. Probably not going to go with 2 Bears in one lineup though. Chad Hansen, assuming Chad Hansen sounds more like an announcer than a wide receiver in the NFL, but this is the Houston Texans roster, and with Cooks having a possible concussion scare, and Fuller out for the year, and nobody dressing. Right now, Chad Hansen on Monday, and this can change as the week goes on because we're in the COVID 2020 season. If the Texans suit up the 3-4 wide receivers that they suited up last week, Hansen's going to play a lot of snaps. He's going to run a lot of routes. And if he does that, he's going to get targeted, with Deshaun Watson probably going to throw the ball 30 to 40 times, with maybe 8 to 10 targets going to Cooks, and 8 targets, maybe 9 targets going to Kiki Kuti. And both of them have been priced up aggressively for this slate based on their volume expectations. Chad, the lifeguard, is sitting here at 3,900. I just want him to have the white zinc on his nose. Could he do that? Could he do that for, if he, like, they always, they can wear the eye black, and like some guys go with like the big V's under there. I want Chad Hansen wearing just white zinc on his nose for this for this game this weekend. At 3,900, 7 targets, way too much for that price. I'm going to plug him for right now, and feel free to change that as the week goes on. That's the lineup right now. We've got Herbert, Aaron Jones, Taylor, Allen, AJ Brown, the lifeguard, Kmet, the non-copyrighted frog, Myles Gaskin, and whatever defense. We got 100 left. We'll find a cheap defense to play as the week goes on. Thank you guys for joining. Look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.